And what's going on, Bruin Nation? It's the Madman here on the latest episode of Bruin Bites, and great to see all of you as always. Excited to sort of get into it. Lots going on this week. We got some more portal fun, conversation potentially about a new quarterback, and then we break it all down in the hardwood as the Bruins had a classic against North Carolina. So excited to sort of jump right into things. We begin with a farewell, an ode that we had expected, but nonetheless want to give this individual all his respect, all his flowers, all his due for an absolutely phenomenal season. As expected, Carson Schwesinger, our Butkus Award finalist, has officially declared for the NFL draft. Schwesinger had an incredible season, going from walk-on to defensive captain. And this 2024 season was an absolutely historic one of the great linebacker seasons in UCLA football history, and certainly the greatest one since Eric Kendricks in 2014. Schwesinger ended up with 136 total tackles, 90 of the solo variety, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions, and a forced fumble, and all on top of being a Henry Samueli School of Engineering graduate as a bioengineering major. So Carson Schwesinger just epitomizes everything that is right about UCLA and the Bruin values and the Bruin brand and everything that UCLA stands for, and we wish him nothing but the best moving forward. This was sort of a no-brainer decision, particularly when you look at the fact that Jay Toia, Femi Oladejo, and Kane Medrano are going to be departing with him, and the window of opportunity in the NFL is so fleeting that you have to take advantage of the opportunity as soon as it presents itself. So we expected this, but a bittersweet day nonetheless for Carson Schwesinger. We are going to be rooting so heavily for his success as we do with all the other Bruins, and can't wait to see his journey unfold into the NFL. And so now we sort of segue over the last couple of days, not quite the flurry that we saw from perhaps the previous 5 or 6 days where we saw 10 commitments, but 2 new commitments joined this class that brings it now to 13 transfer portal individuals in this class of 2025. The first is Cole Martin, a familiar friend, former 4-star defensive back out of Chandler, Arizona, the son of the newly minted secondary coach at UCLA, Demetrius Martin. And Cole Martin comes from a couple of stops. He spent 2023 at Oregon, where he had 21 tackles and an interception, and then spent 2024 this past season with Arizona State, where he was sparingly used. But we really like what we're seeing out of Cole Martin, 5'10", 185, kind of that classic bump and run corner again. We've seen a number of those players fit that archetype. He now becomes the 6th defensive back of this transfer portal class, and he returns home. Born and raised in Pasadena, California, Demetrius Martin, the new secondary coach, played for head coach Jim Mora at UCLA. So Cole spent a lot of time with this program, with this team at the Rose Bowl, and we're absolutely thrilled to have him, bringing an additional depth piece in that secondary that we needed. That's been a total overhaul. And then, of course, the second get, another very significant one, Ashton Sanders, former 3-star, 6'1", 295 pounds, spent the last 2 years at Oklahoma and was sparingly used to the tune of half a sack over the last 2 seasons. But he returns home as he was also an individual born and raised in Pasadena, California. So yet another big SEC body to come in and fortify this defensive line, which is what we were looking for. And now you sort of look at the rotation that's taking place. You've got Nico DeVilliers. You got Acuna from Utah. You've got Ashton Sanders. You've got Gary Smith III. You've got Keanu Williams coming back. You got Jacob Busic as a rotational piece, and now others as these young guys stepping up. So UCLA is doing a tremendous job yet again in the portal, both offensive line, defensive line, and bolstering up that secondary. So a lot more excitement as we unpack things in the weeks to come, particularly as we head into spring ball. That seems like it's oh so close from taking place. And that, I think, leaves us now from a situation of what do the Bruins do next? 13 players, like we mentioned, really sort of addressing positions of need. I think the big question now moving forward is what happens at the quarterback position? And, do you sort of roll the dice with Tino Sanseri and, understand that this is going to be an offense that is going to have a fortified offensive line, is going to have a trio, perhaps even a quartet of receivers that are highly credible, highly competent, to the tune of Quasi Gilmer, TMA, Rico Flores, Jaden Wilson, the transfer out of Arkansas. We have Hudson Habermill coming in and stepping into that Moliki Matavao role. Berger, Cox at running back. So do you need a quarterback here to necessarily do too much? Or do you need someone that's going to sort of manage the game, get the ball out to playmakers in space, and really keep the chains moving? And if that is, in fact, the case, UCLA's got a really nice room here with a pair of 4 stars in Luke Duncan and Demarcus Davis, both of whom I think have a tremendous amount of upside, both of whom bring different skill sets to the table. Luke Duncan looks a lot like Curtis Rourke, the starting quarterback at Indiana, who Sunseri coached to a college football playoff appearance. And then, of course, Demarcus Davis, as I mentioned before, feels very much like a young, lean, raw Brett Hundley. So a lot to sort of like there. Having said that, we see the opportunity here take place for a couple of quarterbacks in the portal. I mean, the first in particular is Fernando Mendoza, 2-year starter at Cal. Is coming off of a season where he had 3,004 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and 68.7% completion percentage. This was a guy who, back in 2023 went toe-to-toe with the reigning Heisman winner and Caleb Williams, as Cal fell just short to USC 50-49 in an absolute thriller. And then yet again went head-to-head this past season with the likes of another Heisman decorated quarterback and a finalist in Cam Ward at Miami, where Cal had that huge lead only to sort of let it slip away very late in the game. So Fernando Mendoza now is out there. And, he's 6'4", 215 pounds, from Miami originally. And so the Canes are in the mix. Who's going to be the heir apparent to Cam Ward? You got Georgia in the mix. Who's going to be the heir apparent to Carson Beck? You've got Wisconsin in the mix. And then, of course, UCLA as well. Mendoza comes from a family of doctors, really a very prestigious family. I think UCLA fits the mold of Cal in so many different ways, being sibling schools. So it's going to be really interesting to see how and what Mendoza actually decides. And the fact that Burl Tollar now is UCLA's new wide receivers coach, who spent basically all of the last 10 years at Cal from 2013 to present, with the exception of just 2016 and 2017, where he spent time at Fresno State and UC Davis. The rest of that time was exclusively at Cal. You have to wonder if Mendoza is going to be comfortable at UCLA with his wide receivers coach and this quartet of receivers to throw to. Having said that, it's a very competitive world out there. And when you talk about NIL with the likes of a Georgia, with the likes of a Miami, there's going to be a lot of dollar signs being thrown Mendoza's way. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. Another quarterback that's entered the portal that could be intriguing is Tavon Jackson. He is the backup quarterback to Curtis Rourke this past year at Indiana. He came in a spot start against Washington when Rourke got hurt, went 11 for 19 in that game for 124 yards, a touchdown, and interception. A lot to like about this kid, 6'5", 212, dual threat quarterback. But I think it's interesting that if UCLA were to spend more NIL on a quarterback, you probably want to go with a more experienced veteran and sort of a more proven guy like Mendoza rather than a Tavon Jackson. Because the argument there is, you've got a lot of upside with Davis and Duncan. And if you've got the money to spend, you probably want to spend it on even more offensive line and even more defensive line, given the nature of this Big Ten. So it'll be interesting to see how Deshaun Foster and company think about this moving forward. Is Mendoza an absolute need and a must get, or are they feeling comfortable with their quarterback room as is, with the pieces around them and the coaching staff around them for this group to be successful? So more to come. The intrigue sort of continues, but yet again, UCLA has demonstrated with now 13 transfer portal additions, they've been out in front of the curve. This wave of the portal ends, the window ends December 28th. So UCLA seems to have done the lion's share of their work early prior to this deadline. And then obviously things are going to be quiet. And then the portal opens yet again for about 10 days in the middle of April. So we'll see now how this roster gels over the next 60 to 90 days. and then see what gaps are there, what opportunities are there to go hit the portal again and really address things as you sort of get into fall ball and really get ready for the 2025 season. So very exciting times indeed for the football program, and it's great to see so much proactivity on that side of the ball. We segue now to the hardwood, and oh boy, a crushing loss over the weekend. The then 18th ranked UCLA Bruins fall in really devastating fashion at the CBS Sports Classic at the mecca of basketball at MSG, Madison Square Garden, the famed Madison Square Garden, 76-74 to fellow blue blood North Carolina Tar Heels. And obviously no shame in losing this game, given who North Carolina is. Obviously they came in 6-5, but they were probably the best 6-5 team in America, and played a lot of top competition, very, very close. Had a lot of balls sort of go against their way, a lot of bounces go against their way. So you figured the basketball gods and sort of the karmic nature of the sport was going to kind of fall their way at some point eventually. You were just hoping it wasn't at the expense of the Bruins, but you can't help but walk away from this game sort of gut-wrenched. UCLA had a 16-point lead with less than 10 minutes to go in this game and just couldn't find a way to close it out. It was a game that saw Tyler Bilodeau, lead the team with 26 points on 9 out of 14 shooting. He was absolutely sensational, scoring UCLA's first 11 points of the game, and then and really sort of solidifying UCLA with the lead the first 10 minutes of the game, and then re-emerging in that third 10 minutes, that first 10 minutes of the second half. He was dropping threes left, right, and center, really as the go-to guy, and helped build that 16-point lead for UCLA. And in the interim 10 minutes, that second 10 minutes of the first half, Sebastian Mack was absolutely sensational with slashing to the basket, finding some rim runs, and then also, hitting the outside shot to the tune of 22 points. So between Bilodeau and Sebastian Mack, they combined for 48 of the 74, and UCLA looked in certain position to win this game. Unfortunately, yet again, it was the free throw shooting became the bugaboo for this team. Only went 13 for 22 from the line, and some huge misses, particularly down the stretch. Bilodeau missed 3 free throws down the stretch. You had a situation where Sky Clark missed 2 free throws with inside 10 minutes. Ade Mara missed a free throw. It was just really tough to watch. Some sloppiness at the end of that game. And North Carolina found a way with a little bit of questionable officiating there in the final 30 seconds to sort of pull this game out. But as you sort of zoom out, we had talked in the last episode that really one of the barometers for UCLA is, could their 4 perimeter guys, could 2 of those 4 guys show up to the tune of double figures? And if they could do that, different 2 every night, this team, combined with their depth, combined with their versatility, combined with having Bilodeau as their go-to guy, and combining with that tenacious defense that forces so many turnovers and is so ball hawking and sort of translates things into the half court, this was going to be a Final Four team, no question about it in my mind. And unfortunately, we didn't quite get enough of that production in the backcourt. While Mack was sensational with 22 points, Clark only finished with 9. Stefanovic only had 6. Dylan Andrews only had 2. And so the rule didn't quite shake off as we sort of anticipated it would, and it ended up biting the Bruins there down the stretch. But in sort of zooming out, obviously not a catastrophic loss by any stretch of the imagination. The Bruins only fell 4 spots. They're sitting at number 22 in the country now at 10-2, with an opportunity for redemption against Gonzaga here this Saturday at the Intuit Dome. But yet again, it's a situation where a Mick Cronin-led team has blown a big lead in the second half. And when you think about how things sort of shook out against Gonzaga in the tournament 2 years ago, when you think about how things have shaken out with some USC games in the past few years, when you think about how things have sort of shaken out with some marquee games in the non-conference over the last few years, you really just wonder, for all the good that Mick Cronin has done, and there's so much there, the 2021 Cinderella run from First Four to Final Four, the back-to-back Sweet 16 appearances in 2022 and 2023. The 23 team, for my money, was probably headed for a collision course with UConn for the national championship if it wasn't for the unfortunate injuries to both Bona and Clark. they were headed for perhaps another national championship and banner number 12. For all the good that Mick Cronin has done here at UCLA and how much passion he's shown, it is unfortunate to see another blown lead. And you got to wonder, his leadership style being so in your face, so intense, you really wonder whether the players, when they have a big lead, they're playing to win or they're playing not to lose. And it just, that theme keeps emerging. Guys are tight, guys are unsure of themselves, guys are afraid to make the big mistake, and the lead gets sort of whittled away. It's sort of the equivalent in football when you have a big lead, you stop being aggressive altogether. You stop throwing the ball. You're just playing the clock. You're running the ball. You're becoming extra conservative. And we've seen this now time and again with Mick Cronin. And I think for him to take that final step to truly be in that elite level of competing for national championships year over year, I think Mick's going to have to do some soul searching to say, what am I doing wrong and what should I be doing differently in the crunch time of these games? Because I'm a good enough coach to be able to build these leads, but I don't feel like I'm a good enough coach to sort of hold these leads and take this all the way to the finish line, particularly against teams with equal talent. And so I think this is something that we have to monitor and watch as followers and fans and analysts of UCLA, because this is that step that Mick Cronin needs to make. And we have, obviously, we're supporting him. We're encouraged by all his previous success, but this is something he really needs to address. And if it's something that he can't solve, then a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, Martin Jarmond may need to make some tough decisions. Let's not forget, Jarmond is signed now through 2029, and Jarmond did not hire Mick Cronin. So, not to suggest that there's any sort of hot seat by any stretch of the imagination. That would be, tomfoolery. But I think over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, if Mick Cronin cannot kind of get over the hump of being able to sort of win these games and close out these games against marquee competition when UCLA's built up big leads, we're going to have to take a step back and say, for UCLA to claim their rightful place at the top of college basketball, is Mick Cronin the absolute right guy for the job? So something to sort of ponder as we close out the 2024 calendar. And Bruin Nation, the time flies when you're having a good time. We got another Bruin Bites here in the books. And before we sign off, I just want to wish all of you a wonderful, happy, safe, joyous, memorable holiday season. Thank you so much for your support. Your comments mean so much to me. And we're one Bruin Nation together. And wishing all of you and your loved ones just a wonderful holiday season. And we will see you in a couple of days. And as always, fours up forever.